and is different for everyone, whether it's the loss of a loved one, a relationship, even a significant chapter in our lives. Grief can be overwhelming, but it's also a path to healing, growth, and ultimately peace. So we invited life coach, motivational speaker, and author Angela Wynette to help us navigate our healing journeys. Good morning. It's so good to have you in the studio.
Thank you so much.
So you jumped right from grief to healing. How does someone start a healing journey?
You start your healing journey by first being honest about the fact that you are experiencing grief. A lot of us are in denial and we don't want to acknowledge the feelings that we are feeling, but grief is not just limited to the loss of a loved one. It could be, like you said, the loss of a major event, losing a job after so many years unexpectedly, the loss of a relationship, whether it's divorce, or even a friendship. So those are all things that grief can be displayed through that we don't want to acknowledge at times.
So I think a lot of us have heard of the 5 stages of grief. Does everybody go through them? Do you have to go through them?
Everyone does not go through the 5 stages of grief. It really depends on the individual and what it is, the type of grief that you are experiencing. You have denial, you have bargaining, you have anger, you have acceptance, and not everyone goes through those different stages, because if they don't acknowledge that they're grieving, they won't even get to the acceptance. They'll stay in the denial and anger phase.
So let's say that you don't complete the grieving process and you don't heal. What are the potential negative effects down the road?
Those negative effects can display in your life in so many different facets. You can become angry, you can become closed off, you can push away people that are actually there to heal you. You can also cause yourself to become jaded in your reality towards people, and then you begin to see them as an attack when they're really there to help you, but because you see everything as a problem because of that grief, you don't allow those people to get close to you.
So I think anybody who's ever experienced grief would agree it's a crappy thing.
Yes. Yes.
It's really an icky feeling.
Yes.
So does it go away once you start the healing, or is there a transition?
Grief never really goes away. It's just a process that once you begin the healing process, it makes it easier to carry the emotion to where now you're able to live with the grief, manage it properly, and retain a healthy environment to now that grief is no longer overtaking you. So when you get triggered by a song or a memory, or you see someone that reminds you of that grief that you experienced, it doesn't no longer take you out, but now you're able to cope and live in a healthy environment.
So let's say there's somebody watching right now who is going through a difficult time. What are some tools you can use to help you work through grieving and to heal while grieving and make it bearable?
There are several tools. Myself being a life coach as well as a motivational speaker, I have several books out that talk about grief. And so those are some great assets to get some books. Start journaling. You can utilize therapy, a psychologist, a therapist, a life coach. You can even join a support group if they have them at the YMCA or your local church assembly. There's so many different tools and assets, and even a close family member or friend that you feel safe with.
Is grief and healing ever an easy process for someone?
It varies on the individual. Grief can look different for everyone. And so it's a process that if you take on the time to actually explore your different resources, it's not an easy process for everyone, but it is obtainable. It is possible. Even if you experience grief in the public light and you have to experience that every day by seeing it on the news or social media, you can still obtain grief. It's just a process.
So what would you say to someone who's watching right now, maybe, and you're trying to help a loved one, a friend through grief? I mean, I think it can be awkward. I've had people where they knew I lost something and they didn't say anything, because and I'm sure that they were trying their best at that time. What do you do to help somebody else?
It varies. There are several things you can do. First, you can actually just ask the individual, what does assistance look like for you, to see what best benefits them. And then once you go from there, then you can help them access those different tools that they need to be successful in their grief process.
So what does assistance, I like that. Any other possible things you could reach out and say, because that's a good one. What does assistance look like to you?
Yes, you can also give them tools and necessary resources, such as a helpline, such as therapists. There are even free access for services for people if you don't have insurance to be able to access a licensed therapist. There are services you can do throughout the community. And so again, and then you can utilize the different books, such as I have myself, to be able to help get you those resources you need.
And if you give somebody a book, how do you go about doing that? Because you don't want to be like, here, read, you know,
Right.
you don't want to impose your
Right.
your thing of what you think they need to do on them at that time. What's a good way to do that?
The good way to do that is a buddy system. So you can always say, hey, let's go through this journey together. I may not know exactly how you're feeling, but I'm willing to take on the task of helping you accomplish your success in your grief process by reading the book with them, by going through the assignments with them, by going and attending the appointments with them, to let them know that they have a support system in a safe space.
I love that. Let's go through this together. That's real friendship. So you have several books. Where can people find your books? Where do they find you?
You can find me on AngelaWynette.com, on Amazon, Angela Wynette. You can also look at me on social media, on all platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, at author Angela Wynette is my handle, as well as, again, my website, www.angelawynette.com.
All right.